Hey, all, Matt Stockton here. I wanted to share something I've been playing around with today in AI and large language model space, and that is Google's language models. So, Google recently released models called Gemini 1.5 Flash, and Gemini 1.5 Pro. And the big benefit of these models is they have extremely large context windows. Now, a context window in a language model is effectively how much text a model can look at when it's generating a response. It's a lot more complicated than that, but that's kind of the high level overview. And for these Gemini models, there's two models. One is Flash and one is Pro. And one allows 1 million input tokens, and the other allows 2 million input tokens. And a token is not quite like a word, but it's similar. But that number of tokens gives you an immense ability to just have a huge prompt when you're trying out these models. To give you a comparison, GPT-4o, the context window is 128K, which is still quite big. They've made a lot of improvements recently, but 1 million or 2 million is just gigantic. It gives you a lot of flexibility in what you add to these models. So I wanted to try this out, and then one way that I thought would be interesting to try this out is to use it to try to do some financial analysis of companies based on their annual reports. I've always been kind of curious about small cap investing. I've never really taken the time to dig in, and I don't think I will after this. Spend a ton of time on it. But this was a really interesting way to get a large language model to dig into an annual report. So the first thing I did, I wanted to find maybe 10 different companies to look at once, and so I actually used Claude to give me a stock screener that I could use to find small cap stocks. I wanted to define some attributes that I could use to plug into a stock screener to surface 10 to 15 companies. And it gave me, some different filtering criteria. And then I asked it to provide specific numbers for attributes. And it gave me 5 different attributes here. And again, this is definitely not a sophisticated way to screen stocks, and it's definitely not investment advice, but this wasn't the focus of this exercise. I just wanted something that was somewhat reasonable to find a bunch of stocks that I could look at. So I took this criteria and I went to Finviz, which is a really nice free tool that allows you to screen stocks based on criteria. And I plugged those criteria into their filter, which gave me about 15 different stocks. And from there, what I did is I went to annualreports.com, which allows you to download. It's one of the sites. There's a lot of sites out here that are like this. Allows you to search for a ticker and download different SEC forms. So I use that to download form annual reports for a handful of these companies in PDF format. And let me show you an example of what one of those PDFs look like. So these PDFs are quite big, right? Very dense. This one is 88 pages. And it, you could go through and read it. And I'm sure if you actually wanted to use this to drive your investment hypotheses, you should definitely do that. But that's not my objective here. I'm just trying to learn how these things can actually use all this information and make sense of it. But, there's a lot of stuff here. There's images, there's text, there's tables. It'd take a lot of work to go through here and get the signal out of it. So what I did from there is I actually used ChatGPT. I wanted to figure out a good prompt to use. Like, I'm going to give all these PDFs to these Google language model. What prompt should I use to tell it how to analyze this? And again, this is just kind of surface. Like, I'm sure you could really tweak the prompt to give a really good prompt to analyze these annual reports. But this is one of the interesting things about these models is you can actually use them to generate good prompts. You could say, you're an expert prompt creator for large language models. I want to tell you what I want to do, and I want you to turn it into a prompt. And you could really refine this. There's actually specific tools you can use to do this now, but I just wanted something quick that I could prototype with inside of the Gemini models. So it gave me this, and it says, hey, I would like you to analyze these reports focusing on key metrics, etc. So not bad. It's a good start. And so from that, I went into Google AI Studio. And Google AI Studio is Google's kind of web interface for working with these models. You can, of course, use these models via API, but the Studio is a really nice way to just kind of play around. And one interesting aspect is it seems to be free to use it via the Studio. It's a bit slow, but it's free. I'm sure there's some limits. I haven't really looked into what the actual limits are. If you're using this via the API, the way these things charge is by token. So Gemini Flash charges between 35 cents and 70 cents per million tokens. So it's not free, but it's not super expensive. So in this full demo that I did, the total tokens that it used was 875,000. So this is going to come in well under $1 for doing this prototype. And these models charge for input tokens and output tokens. The output tokens, a bit more expensive, but also these models right now, they actually are pretty limited on the output side. So for Gemini, the number of tokens you can output is 8,192. I believe that's the same for GPT-4o right now. So that's why, these responses, sometimes when you're using them, they'll just kind of end or stop. It's because there's a limitation on the number of tokens can be generated on the output. Anyways, that's kind of some background information here. And one other thing to add for the people that are kind of deep in the weeds on the technical side is with these longer context windows, there's potentially less of a need to use this other capability or pattern called retrieval augmented generation, which instead of just putting all your information into the prompt like I'm doing here, you actually have a separate system that's effectively like a database where you're looking up information dynamically and injecting that information into the prompt. It was kind of a way to almost save like input token space, but also give more clear and directed information based on a prompt before you actually put that prompt through the large language model. But there's some debate as to like how these new bigger context windows compete with RAG and when you use one versus the other. I'm not deeply versed on that, but I know there's a lot of talk about that. So anyways, I'm going to show you the output of this exercise. So I came in and I uploaded all these PDFs. So you can see the number of tokens that each of these PDFs took. They're quite big. Again, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, something like that. So 9 of these PDFs, and if they're all 90 pages or so, it's almost like 1,000 pages of information in unstructured format, various tables, images, all this stuff. So there's lots of stuff there. And so I took that and I used that prompt that I generated using ChatGPT, and I asked it to provide a ranked list of these companies in order of investment potential. Again, this is not investment advice at all. This is just a way for me to experiment with these long context windows. The prompt also asked to suggest any potential risks or red flags that I should be aware of for each company. So this takes a bit of time to run. So it took a couple minutes to run when I did it. And it did a pretty interesting job though. So it reviewed the PDF files and it, completed an analysis of each of these companies, and it tried to rank which companies to invest in. And it gave a pretty succinct list of financial strengths, the growth potentials, market position, management quality, risks, overall assessment. So it's going to be pulling this information from those PDFs and kind of making sense of it. Of course, if you're going to really use this is just a first pass, right? Like you wouldn't want to necessarily use this and say, oh, I'm going to go invest in this Esquire Financial Holdings. But it might be a really good tool to, do the first pass at the analysis. So it kind of went through and did this for these companies, Ardmore Shipping, Dorchester Minerals, and it gives you some information about what it found in these annual reports. And again, all these annual reports, they're going to be, slightly different. Like let's look at Dorchester. This one's a lot more just texty in nature. But this one's 97 pages, so lots there. So really interesting stuff. I mean, the fact that you can use all this information in one prompt and get some reasonable information back is really incredible. I did ask a follow-up question. I asked asked the model to describe how it ranked Esquire Financial Holdings above Ardmore Shipping Corporation and walk me through the thought process step by step. And this was quite interesting, right? So it walked through each of the areas it analyzed, and it said, okay, why did I choose Esquire over Ardmore? And on the surface, it seems reasonable, and at least it gives me a spot to go dig in more if I was curious about either of these companies. Esquire Financial demonstrates significant loan growth driven by high-yielding commercial loans and strong emphasis on litigation. So anyways, I just wanted to share some of the cool things you can do with these long context window models right now, and it's only going to get better. And these models, you can put in PDFs, you can put in videos, you can put in images, you can do all types of stuff. So I'm really excited to dig in more on kind of the Google suite of these tools. It seems like they're continually pushing out new stuff, just like Claude and OpenAI are as well. So definitely let me know what you're doing in this space. I always love to hear what others are thinking about and what they're learning. Send me an email or send me a note. I'll talk to you later.